forcing a star to quite literally jump in the deep end and power through some childhood trauma to get the perfect take, suspending a height-dreading actor up high for multiple films in a row, and nudging a performer down a path they swore to stay clear of are just a few examples of legit fears becoming unfortunate realities for these talented folks. I'm Gareth from Whatculture.com, and here are 10 actors whose worst fears came true. Number 10. Childhood trauma makes Jennifer Aniston think twice before submerging. The events of our youth can have a monumental effect on the way we approach and view the world as we continue to grow. In the case of Jennifer Aniston, one of these life-altering moments came in the form of a traumatic accidental tumble into a pool whilst riding a tricycle at the age of 5. Refusing to let go of said tricycle, the star sunk straight to the bottom before her brother fished her out of the water. Needless to say, the whole ordeal scarred her for life, and Aniston now has a very real fear of being submerged underwater. Cue the star being asked to perform a scene in the film Cake years later, which saw her character having to take hold of some weights and see if she could take her own life via sinking to the bottom of a pool. As you'd expect, this was very much a nightmare situation for the actor. The fact it took her 30+ takes to get the shot they were looking for only reaffirms this, and her comments afterwards suggest she's still far from over this fear. Number 9. You won't catch Scarlett Johansson buying a zoo anytime soon. As we'll touch upon again later in this list, it's not uncommon for people to find certain creatures a little bit frightening. Yet if you know you don't play well with cats, for example, you'd likely make sure to stay clear of your auntie's beloved Persian pet. However, not everyone is blessed with the ability to straight up avoid the critter that makes them jitter. Some folks are even made to work with them for hours on end. From the minute Scarlett Johansson signed up for a film entitled We Bought a Zoo though, the star terrified of birds had to know she would likely find herself sharing a scene or two with some. And that's precisely what happened. Determined to power through this fear come to life, Johansson resisted the urge to flee from the various peacocks and other winged beasts on set throughout, even admitting that she would have probably allowed a bird to perch on her shoulder if asked to do so. Yet she's still absolutely terrified of the feathered fiends, saying that even after shooting on the film was up, that fear still hasn't gone away. Number 8. Being buried alive was no joke for a claustrophobic Uma Thurman. You don't really need to be claustrophobic to fear being buried alive. Those true words were spoken by none other than Uma Thurman when asked how she dealt with the scene involving her character in Kill Bill Volume 2 being thrown into a coffin and buried alive. As noted, the actor definitely has a valid point, as you'll find very few people willingly lining up to partake in some deep dirt diving inside of a tight wooden box. However, should you find yourself in a situation where you're being shoved inside of a coffin as part of your job, and just so happen to suffer from claustrophobia, it likely takes an already stressful scenario up a few notches. Thurman, a self-professed fearer of confined spaces, has gone on record to state that there was no acting required for the scene in question, which saw the bride panicking at the realization of being nailed shut inside of a box. And honestly, it's not hard to see why, is it? Number 7. Salma Hayek is never in a rush to handle snakes. While Scarlett Johansson's fear of birds may seem a little odd to some, not being in a rush to handle a serpent is a debilitating fear shared by a sizable amount of the population. One of said snake fearers comes in the form of none other than Salma Hayek, a piece of information that makes her appearance in Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn that little bit more mesmerizing. For those not in the know, Hayek introduces herself to the audience with an on-stage performance involving a python being wrapped around her figure. How did Hayek get over her greatest fear, I hear you ask? Well, rather depressingly, Quentin Tarantino sprung this piece of information on the terrified star late in the day, telling her that Madonna was interested in the role and would be happy to step in for her should she back out. Determined not to lose her shot, Hayek went into a trance whilst executing the sequence, noting that the entire dance was improvised as you can't choreograph a snake. Number 6. Anthony Mackie does not like heights. It's safe to say Anthony Mackie must have been absolutely over the moon when he was informed that he would be taking up the mantle of Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, in the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who wouldn't be pinching themselves at the prospect of lining up alongside Captain America, Iron Man, Thor and the gang on the big screen? Well, saying that, this particular honeymoon period likely wore off very quickly once Mackie realized precisely what the role would entail. As he would later reveal once he'd wrapped on the Winter Soldier, the star actor is deathly afraid of heights, so you can see where the issue lies with this chosen MCU hero. This fear made being wired up and flung around various sound stages and other environments a daily struggle for the actor while shooting his superhero debut. In all honesty, being hoisted 70 feet in the air would likely be enough to spook even the most fearless of adrenaline junkies. But for a dude who has openly admitted his hatred of tall places, it makes his continual presence as the high-flying Falcon turned Captain America that little bit more admirable. Number 5. Emma Watson is terrified of singing in front of people. For a star who has found herself firmly in the spotlight since the age of 9 years old, you'd be forgiven for assuming that Emma Watson has long since gotten over any fears when it comes to performing in front of her peers. Yet you'd be surprisingly wrong, as Watson herself has admitted that her performance as Belle in 2017's Beauty and the Beast live-action remake filled her with dread for one very specific reason: she is terrified of singing in front of an audience. So it's not hard to see why this was going to be a tough ask for the star. Despite enjoying a warble every now and again as a child, Watson admitted after starring in the Disney feature that at the beginning, "I was afraid to sing in front of 3 people. However, by the time the shoot was coming to an end, she was singing live in front of 300. That being said, it seems as though Watson still holds some fear towards belting out a tune in a crowded room, with the Harry Potter star later adding, "I hate karaoke," and that she didn't know how to do it for fun. Number 4. Eva Green and typecasting. Though Eva Green would eventually go on to appear opposite Daniel Craig in Casino Royale as Vesper Lind, the actor was initially quite reluctant to sign on the dotted line. This was due to the fact that she didn't want to become known as a Bond girl, a type of character known primarily for being a femme fatale in the 007 franchise. Green may have had her reasons for ultimately agreeing to show up in the first Craig starring Bond flick, stating that Lind was actually a strong character that's got cracks. Yep, that's what she said. Yet the star's fears of being nudged toward more femme fatale roles in later films would depressingly become a reality in the wake of her spy showing in the 2006 movie. Seductive turns in everything from Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, to Kingdom of Heaven followed for Green, with the actor even revealing in 2016 that it makes her sad to think that she is seen only in this light when it comes to some of the folks casting her in various projects. Number 3. Ben Affleck can't do Batman or Daredevil justice. As a youngster, Ben Affleck found himself reading many a comic book. Yet one character who stuck out for the actor more than most was that of Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. So the star was understandably overjoyed when he was given the chance to bring the red-suited superhero to life in Mark Steven Johnson's 2003 adaptation. However, things wouldn't go as well as Affleck would have hoped, and the film is now regularly used as a guideline for how not to introduce a comic book hero to the big screen. This bitter experience quite rightly scared Affleck away from donning a superhero costume again for some time. But fast forward to 2013 and after some convincing from Zack Snyder, Affleck was back in the superworld, baby. This time playing Bruce Wayne himself in the new DCEU, the star once again found himself stuck in the thick of a divisive and rather disappointing set of projects though. And before long, the fears of not doing the character justice that had kept him away from the genre for years once again reared their heads, leaving him no choice but to hang up the iconic cowl in the end. Number 2. Nicolas Cage's failed comic book movies. If you thought Ben Affleck was a comic book fanatic, then Nicolas Cage takes that obsession and dials it up to 11. In fact, the star's stage name was even influenced by none other than Marvel's very own Luke Cage. So you can imagine just how excited Cage must have been when he realized he would be donning Superman's cape in Tim Burton's Superman Lives. The actor even went on record stating that he truly felt he could reconceive the character. As we all know, Superman Lives well and truly died before it ever saw the light of day. But that didn't scare the comic book lover away from the genre by any means. Determined to bring a successful version of a superhero to life, Cage got back in the saddle to play Johnny Blaze / Ghost Rider in 2 lackluster features. He'd later admit that Ghost Rider was a movie that always should have been an R-rated movie, but the studio clearly had other ideas. And the passionate fan of the fictional heroes once again found himself at the center of an underwhelming super story. At least he smashed it out of the park in Kick-Ass and Into the Spider-Verse though. Number 1. Liam Neeson and typecasting. For a star who once explained his fear of being typecast over the course of his career, Liam Neeson hasn't half made a habit out of signing on to play characters of a, let's say, similar ilk. There was a time when it felt like you couldn't sit down and take in a Neeson performance without the star assuming the role of wise master / leader. With his various turns as Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace, Aslan in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and Ra's al Ghul in the Dark Knight series, all giving the Academy Award-nominated actor the platform to deliver many a compelling educational monologue. Then, determined to break out of that type, Neeson redefined himself as a grizzled, aging action star later down the line, kicking all the ass and searching for revenge in the likes of the Taken franchise, Cold Pursuit, and Non-Stop, to name but a few. So despite seemingly wanting to be anything but a pigeonhole performer for much of his time in the industry, the star's early fears have now become a consistent way of paying the bills. Suppose there's worse ways to earn a living.